We provide education for cider makers.
At what level?
At all levels.
Hello, my name is Ria Wincaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world.
Hip, hip, hooray!
That was Brighid O'Keefe, the executive director of the Cider Institute, bringing us into this year episode 448 of Cider Chat. She was talking about the different offerings that the Cider Institute provides to cider makers and future cider makers. You're going to be hearing all about that because Brighid is our featured guest on this week's episode 448. And I need to say this before I go any further. I don't know what it is. You could blame it on a rather stuffy head a week ago, but I was calling her Brighid Murphy. I actually do have a friend called Brighid Murphy, so there you go. And I don't know why I do this. I tried to explain to her that sometimes I mess up names, and I've done it more than once in the history of Cider Chat, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. But just to make it really, really clear, her name is Brighid O'Keefe. How I got it to Murphy, I don't know, but we'll make sure we have it correct in the show notes moving forward. And I had a really great sit-down conversation with her, learning all about the Cider Institute. And I think this will be really helpful for anybody out there in Ciderville who is looking to learn more about cider making, and which we're always getting questions about here on the podcast. And, it's taking a couple steps further into getting a little bit more technical. And I know there's a lot of cider geeks out there who just love that stuff. So perhaps you haven't really realized that there is an organization that is absolutely dedicated to that. And you're going to get to learn how you could sign up for this, how they offer courses, and where they're going with it. So that's pretty exciting. That's our featured conversation. And as always, before I get there, we're going to have a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville. If you have an apple tree, or you're looking at planting an orchard, you're just interested in orchard care in general, I'm going to mention 2 resources in this here episode for you. And you don't have to worry about writing it down. Just go to the show notes for this here episode 448, and you'll find links to sign up for these newsletters. The first is from my friends down in North Carolina, and that is the folks at Cordic Family Farm. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you would have listened to episode 369 called Baba Yaga and Holistic Orchards. And that is an orchard run by a mother and daughter team. We have Dorsey, who took, I guess, the Peter Mitchell course. So if we're talking about the Cider Institute, we're going like way back, probably before the Cider Institute was founded, right? And this is a course that she took. She said Tom Oliver was in her class at one time, and she was looking at going full in on cider making, and you have to listen to the episode. It's really fascinating. I love these women. I'm going to be seeing Brittany next week at the Berkshire Roundtable, which I'll talk about shortly. But anyways, they have this amazing orchard, and they put out a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for. And Brittany, who writes the newsletter, gave me permission to share with you a little bit about the most recent posting, which I found really interesting because it kind of mentions something that's very close to my heart and to my area where I'm based at in my special spot in Ciderville. Brittany writes, "We learned about this unorthodox technique from our orchardist friends in New England. It was apparently developed by a regional pruning outfit decades ago, and many old orchards in Massachusetts still bear the eccentric-looking marks of the Green Mountain pruners. Pretzel pruning involves looping supple branches around to tie a pretzel-like knot and to take up their length. It's not hard to do in some easy-bending tree varieties, but next to impossible in others that have naturally stiffer young growth. So why might one employ pretzel pruning? Well, a lot of reasons, actually, not least because it's fun and a conversation starter. The Green Mountain pruners supposedly place their pretzels with a mind to having convenient handholds to aid them in moving through the enormous standard trees they had to work in. More importantly, for us, when you loop a branch around like that, you create lots of tiny micro cracks or big cracks when the branches refuse to cooperate, and you end up looping the whole thing off in a spurt of frustration and profanity that almost always results in a plethora of fruit buds the following season. If you got a long gangly branch that is just feet and feet of blind, unfruitful wood, a pretzel will help you tone down that endless vegetative growth and spur some fruit buds where once there was none. It also strengthens the branch considerably, as well as shift its placement, perhaps negating the need to manipulate it further with ties or spreaders. In this way, you can repurpose a water sprout that's shooting straight up the tree, parallel with the main trunk, into a viable, well-placed limb with just a quick, careful twist. In fact, if you have a tree that insists on producing tons of water sprouts, leaving some in place with pretzel ties will fool the tree that it doesn't need to keep shooting up more to replace what you've cut. Likewise, since broad exposed limbs tend to send up a lot of water sprouts, you might leave a pretzel sprout in place to shade the limb and prevent sunburn. All right, there you have a little piece. I hope that really inspires you to sign up for the Cordic Family Farm newsletter. Find out what they're doing. Order some of their delicious apple and pear syrup. So they have an apple cider syrup and a pear cider syrup. It's will blow your mind, and great for cooking. Okay, so it's like a molasses but made out of palm fruit. Definitely something to do. And I want to give a tip of the glass to Brad Maloney. He is a Green Mountain pruner that I know who definitely was instrumental in pruning for the past 30 years, the New Salem orchard that I've talked about so many times on this podcast. If you want to see a spectacular museum orchard, you want to visit New Salem Hard Cider in New Salem, Massachusetts, and bring the kids and have them count the apple pretzels up in the tree. It's very entertaining for people of all ages. The next little free resource I want to direct you to is via a friend who's also been on the podcast. Back in episode 408, titled Cider's Pomological Life Coach, and that would be Mike Biltonen, and he has what is called Know Your Roots. He has a consulting business doing this. He is a pomological wizard, deep into BD, biodynamic orcharding, farming, the whole 9 yards, and has a really great newsletter that comes out, especially if you want to get deep into the weeds around pomological care, giving, and whatnot. The most recent one, I think it's the most recent, is called Right Mind, Right Pruning. And it's all about radical pomological, the revolution for it. Mike does a fantastic job. He's also really now shepherding forward the Berkshire Roundtable that was really originated from Michael Phillips, who we lost way too early, who wrote many books on holistic orchard care. So these are some key people for anybody out there who wants to know about apple trees, about pruning, just getting into that loop. In fact, both Brittany and myself, we will be at the Berkshire Roundtable coming up. It's not next week. I think it's a week after or so. And that is like a 2-day event where people just sit in a big circle and talk about stuff. And that's how the apple pretzels came up last year. Matt Kaminsky has taken over that New Salem orchard. He's now the pruner there, so we wish him the best of luck. And you have Mike talking about his experience and so many other cider makers and orchardists there. It's a really amazing group, and a great way to find out about it is to sign up via Know Your Roots. So you can look that up online, or just go to the show notes for episode 408 and listen to that amazing interview with Mike. Again, 2 wonderful resources for orchards.
Walking through the orchards.
Yeah, it's all about orchards. And we're going to be walking through the orchards coming up this August for the 2025 Totally Cider Tour UK edition. And it is sold out. It is 100% sold out. I can't squeeze any more folks in on this tour. But guess what? 2026 is coming straight up, and I'm looking at offering a UK tour in spring of 2026 and a French tour in the fall. Now, I just got to say, there are wait lists for people already wanting to go on these tours. So get your name in now, because I do go by the order that we get the names to try to do it as fair as possible. And before that, another way is to become a patron, because the patrons of this podcast always get first dibs on all the tours. So that is also important to know too. So make sure you send an email to info@ciderchat.com and put in the heading Cider Tour. Let us know how many people are in your party, and we will take it from there and contact you as that first come, first serve basis. And I actually added another cider maker on the UK Cider Tour, because it's always fun to add something on there that the folks who already signed up didn't even know they're going to get this bonus. We're not only going to see 10 makers, we're going to see 11 makers and have a cider dinner with Paul Stevens of Newton Court. That's up in Herefordshire. They have a beautiful setup for a restaurant and everything. We're going to be right there after having lunch during the day with Tom Oliver. Yeah. It's an amazing tour. So please I don't want you to miss these amazing Totally Cider tours. Send that email today, info@ciderchat.com. Up next is our featured guest, Brighid O'Keefe of the Cider Institute. We're going to be hearing all about the courses that the Institute offers and how you can essentially study cider making from anywhere in the world. So grab a glass and join this chat with the Executive Director of the Cider Institute, Brighid O'Keefe.
The Cider Institute was formed in 2016 at CiderCon in Portland by cider makers who were thinking about what's the next step in cider production education, specific to North America and producers at that time. It came largely out of the legacy of Peter Mitchell, who is based in the UK and has been teaching courses for 3 decades, both in the UK and in North America. And so learning from the generations of cider makers that he helped train, that conversation was like, well, how can we continue to build professional education and production education for the growing cider industry in North America?
And he just retired.
He did just retire. We had a really great celebration for him in Mount Vernon, Washington, at the location of the first class he taught in North America 2 decades ago. And so he taught the class, and we had a really great celebration for him.
That's lovely. Is that the primary service offered by the Institute?
100%. That is what makes us unique. That is our core mission. That is what we do. We provide education for cider makers.
At what level?
At all levels. So currently our flagship class, Cider and Perry Production, a foundation, that's offered online now. And so that has made it more accessible for people coming into the industry. We see everyone from just starting out and curious to people who've been making cider for 10 years and they want to get back to the basics of science. So that's our flagship class, but we are in production of a Cider Making 101 course that is more appropriately targeted towards those people who are brand new to cider making. Then we can keep the foundation class focused on what are the core fundamentals of production from a commercial perspective. And then from there, we have advanced both in person and online for every levels of expertise and experience in cider production.
So is it level 1, 2, and 3?
We don't have those levels particularly set. When people take the foundation class, they receive a certification mark of completion from that. And we have advanced courses that are building towards an advanced level of certification, but we don't refer to them as 1, 2, and 3 in the same way that perhaps the ACA's Pomelier program does.
What are you seeing in the time that you've been there in terms of, is cider making going up? Is there an increasing demand, or was there like a certain point in time where was an inflection of sorts?
I know early on, pretty much before my time, and I started right when the Cider Institute was formed, that there was a lot of demand for classes because they weren't offered as often, and so they'd sell out in 5 minutes. I just was talking to one of our instructors who was telling that story. And at this point, we have consistent interest over time, where our online class, we continue to sell out. We offer it twice a year. And so that really shows a demand that people have for learning from the comforts of their own home, adapting to the changing world, the changing environment, to be able to soak everything in over 12 weeks instead of 5 days. We save that intensive time for people to be together when it really comes to the more advanced hands-on coursework.
Yeah, that's a smart move. So the first level, the baseline course, what are some of the components of that?
We go through every stage of making cider from the perspective of a commercial producer. We start with an overview of what's the current market. We do a SWOT analysis as a group, just thinking about the market now. What are the opportunities, the strengths, the weaknesses, the threats of making cider in the current stage? How can we enter the cider industry keeping in mind we're part of a community and we want to have shared goals? And then from there, it's off to the races. We talk about orcharding, we talk about apple selection, the whole framework of the entire production process, and then we go through each step of that in a lot of detail, whether it's chemistry, microbiology, lab analysis, tools of the trade, sensory analysis. We talk about post-production decisions, carbonation, and in addition to the science-based approach that we have, we also bring in commercial producers, experts from the field who are really talking about how have they adapted this education to really put it into practice and have it inform their production techniques.
Mm-hmm. And that's just a level one?
That's level one.
Wow.
That's why we're developing a 101 course that would be self-directed. So someone who not necessarily ready to get that into the weeds when it comes to the cider industry. They want to understand how cider is made rather than how to make cider, which is what we start with the foundation class and beyond.
Okay. You're looking at a 101 course. But the baseline course that you were talking about that I was like, hooey, what is that called?
It's called Cider and Perry Production Foundation.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty involved, and that's online.
That is online.
And there is a time limit for that course? It's like a 12-week, you said?
It's a set 12-week class.
Okay. 12-week class. And I imagine, now in this day and age, being online is not a problem in that way for most people, although I just got high-speed internet in 2019, which is kind of unbelievable, but it happens. In this type of coursework, do they have study groups that happen even over the 12-week, or is it really just individual?
Yes, so over the 12 weeks, we have a weekly Zoom session. So that is the opportunity for all of the students to come together with the instructors. That's when we have the guest speakers come in and talk about the practical application of what that week's topic was. It's a way for people to have more interaction with the instructors, with each other, to have more engagement with the industry, just to enhance learning. So it's in the online context, it's really offers that live component that builds relationships. There's small group activities, and a lot of the cohorts do stay in touch, and that continues on as they continue to build their cider making journey.
There's like little reunion groups, right?
There is.
The class of,
Yes, we actually had one last night. We had an alumni party. It's a way to celebrate people who only see each other online, and then invite others into the fold who might not be as familiar with education.
Yeah. So the 12-week course is right there, and then you're looking at now having the 101 course.
For the enthusiasts, it's for anyone who just wants to understand how cider is made. So they're not quite ready to make the time and financial investment exploring a career in production or to step up their home cider making in a really big way. It's more getting into home cider making, the exploration phase in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And how long is that course?
That course will be self-directed. So it's available at any time. There is not a live component, and people can have access to it and take it at their leisure.
And what are you seeing with that course? Is there a growing demand for the home cider maker who may want to potentially go commercial?
There is. I'm excited for us to be able to offer resources for that niche because it brings our skill set to a bigger audience. And we're really at that phase. We're like, okay, cider, there's so many great resources and so much great cider that's being made, but how are we going to grow it? And growing it at a point that's so advanced already kind of misses the opportunity to introduce people to cider and cider making from the bottom up. So that's something, we have the script set, and we're just talking to different individuals on the production piece of it.
And there's a third component.
So then we have advanced coursework, and we have several advanced classes. We have a GMP's safety and sanitation class that is online, available online, that's self-directed as well. We have a version of that that's a much scaled down version that's specifically for employees. So that's intended for cider owners and cider businesses to send their employees to get an understanding of the fundamentals of safety and sanitation in the cellar. And then we have in-person classes, which include the essential sensory analysis of cider and perry, which runs through the sensory science and then how that is applied to cider, and all the sensory tests that you can do in-house to really build your profile, your aromatic and your characteristic profile of your ciders, and to build internal training for sensory evaluation. We have essential laboratory testing of cider and perry, which is a 3-day class in the lab. So it's learning all the fundamentals of what to test for cider, the chemical parameters.
Where would that take place?
So that ranges, we move that around. So this year it's going, both of those classes are offered in the same week. So people have the option to take one or to bundle them together. That will be at Brock University in St. Catharines, Ontario. Brock is one of our key training providers. In 2026, it will be offered in Mount Vernon, Washington State University. In 2027, it will be at Virginia Tech University.
Nice. So you're kind of hitting different quadrants, primarily North America.
Primarily North America for those classes, although as we'll get into in a little bit, we also are planning some coursework internationally.
Yeah, great. So we have the safety and sanitation, the sensory analysis, the lab work, probably other ones too.
We have a pinnacle course. We're so excited.
I love that.
At this point in time, we're talking before we have officially announced, but we're really excited about it. I know by the time listeners will hear this, the news will be out. But we are working on a 5-day in-person class that's really operations focused. So that will be the hands-on in the cellar. It'll be similar to our foundation class in the sense that it covers every aspect of production, but it's hands-on, it's working together, it's operations focused.
Okay, that's exciting and so necessary.
These are our formal courses. This is what we build the Cider Institute curriculum around, but we also have some modular offerings because we realize the timing, the position, all the considerations, it's not going to work for everyone to take these classes at any point at a particular time. So we look to how we can offer this course in really bite-sized pieces and offer topics that might be out of the context of the classes that we do. So one example of that is we have a monthly technical Skillshare series, and that's more peer-to-peer learning. So we bring in a producer every month to talk about a very specific topic around production. The last one we did was about disgorging and packaging naturally fermented ciders. Okay. So that gives us an opportunity to bring in someone who might have a very specific area of expertise or passion and be able to share that with the cider industry as well.
And is that all done virtually?
It is.
It is.
Yes, and they're all recorded, so they're available whether you hear about it after the fact or you're able to join live.
Who do you see going into cider making at this level?
As far as who's going into cider making, there's a wide range, and it's interesting to see the trends geographically. It's interesting to see the trends of people's backgrounds. There's a lot of engineers who take classes. There's a lot of people who have inherited orchards from their family and they're trying to see what the next stage is. There's a lot of students. It would be amazing to really compile all of the interesting career paths that people are coming from when they take the cider class. But then that's just to respond to who's coming into cider. A lot of the people who are taking the classes are already working for a cidery, or they've already worked for a cidery and they want to take the next stage and step in their career. There's a lot of breweries that are sending people to learn how to make cider, quality cider. And so we're seeing it from some distilleries who have sent people as well. So
breweries, distilleries, wineries are all keeping an eye on this. And with the non-alcohol movement, are you seeing any folks coming in from that perspective at all?
A couple. There have been a couple of people who have come in, not necessarily they come in with that perspective, but that's their goal. And so they come in with the goal of wanting to offer that. But it's been a few people. It hasn't been very common.
We don't really know where that's going to end up, but it's here. It's probably here to stay. Is it the population is more men taking courses, or how does that split?
I don't have those numbers specifically, but in each like in our last class, I'd say it was probably 2/3 men and 1/3 women.
Yeah, the interesting thing about people want to make cider, but it's hard to, like you said, folks are inheriting orchards, or it's a legacy orchard of some sorts, or business from a family. But that piece of actually getting the resources to make this, what I would consider a quality ciders, getting the fruit, right? So does the Cider Institute do anything like that, working with the participants, the programs?
So we really want to hone in on what our expertise is, which is cider production. However, that said, we have so many great partnerships on the orcharding side, on all different surrounding fields, that we recognize the value of being able to offer resources along those lines. So we are actually also in development of a short course, a module online that's cider economics. So it's not to the level of, this is the point where you really need to get some professional consulting or professional help to help you build this business, but to understand the economics behind starting a business and the considerations you need starting from the ground up.
Yeah. One of the main things I see with cider makers is they have really great product, but are not marketing. So there's the cider economics. How about the marketing piece?
We do not work on the marketing piece. It's not really our wheelhouse, but we'd love if there's a partner out there to collaborate with to help provide those resources.
So is it my understanding then, folks coming into the course, they're really responsible for the next stage of figuring out how they're going to get apples or even an orchard?
Well, one of the great things about the class and the fact that people are together for 12 weeks and have all this exposure to people at all levels of experience within the industry is that a lot of those connections are being made in the class. So those questions are asking about, especially the one in the fall where people are looking for juice right then, questions come out of that if the instructors don't have the answer for it, or the guest speakers don't have the answer for it, they likely have a peer in the class who has some experience that they connect with.
And how about the legalities of cider making? Anything touched upon that, like the TTB?
Yes, we focus on regulations. I mean, we have a whole course on regulations. The TTB actually zooms in for 1 week. And then in Canada, because it's so nuanced between each province, depending on who the students are, we bring representatives from different provinces in Canada and have breakout groups around regulation considerations. We are consistently having a large international attendance in the class, also because of the accessibility that being online provides. And so we are looking to build a library from all of the students we've had as far as helping them through the legalization. Obviously, there's limitations on how far we can get, but at least as far as legal definitions of cider, and we're working on about 14 different countries right now.
You know what I like about what you're saying here, Brighid, is that you are staying in your wheelhouse. It's a very niche product that you're offering, and you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, and you're willing to admit that, which is really key, because I think anybody listening would would start realizing, if you don't understand before, is that to become a cider maker commercially is a very complex career goal. It's not as simple as just saying, I'm making good cider at home and I want to go there. You have to be able to get the resources and all that. And I have a sense that, and please correct me if I'm being misled here, but you're really giving the tools to make the product, and then all the other pieces is just another larger component. Is that a good way to look at it, or I'm not sure?
Yes, that's great. We are providing the tools on how to make the product. One of the things that I personally feel is so valuable about the Cider Institute and about my role specifically is that when you are an education organization, you're so many people's entry point into an industry. And so I feel like we're the welcome wagon. And I really feel like the cider industry does this very well, and we've seen it, we've all seen it. I think our instructors, our board, our leadership team does this really well. We help shepherd people's introduction to the industry, and that relationship building, we focus on cider production, but you learn so much more from everyone that you meet once you start making cider, and people are so willing to share those experiences and those resources.
Yeah, well, I could feel it from you, I could feel that, you get into the car, and it's not a clown car, it's like a big vehicle that says, everybody come on board and let's go for a ride and make it work. How many participants is the Cider Institute serving?
So this past year, we had 200 students across 6 different classes that we offered, and they were from 8 different countries.
Okay, let's switch here a little bit and talk about the brand, how it's been redesigned a little bit.
Yes, what we have been finding, since we've seen so much participation from outside of North America, and we've also had conversations with partners outside of North America, that having our name be Cider Institute of North America can feel a little limiting or not as inclusive for people. And there's really no reason to have North America, because we are worldwide experts on cider production and offering that education to anybody. Everything is still our same incorporation, but we're just doing a DBA as Cider Institute. We're dropping the of North America in our nomenclature. We're also going to start moving our way away from CINA, which we've been well known as for a long time. It's kind of hard to let go of your little favorite children there, but just focusing on being the Cider Institute and being the leading authority on cider production education through our partnerships with other individuals around the world. It really is a great opportunity for us to build upon.
I think there's a good branding lesson there, in that CINA, people don't necessarily know what that means. Mm-hmm. But now that you don't have an acronym like CINA, people are going to say the full name, which is Cider Institute. And that's actually a savvy move over using an acronym. Because anyone who isn't in the know would be like, CINA, and then you have to kind of say the full name out. And I just think for brands overall, we have to be very cautious of doing that, and really focus on getting the full name in there, and be wary of, like the ACA. Well, there's a number of ACAs in the U.S., which stands for the American Cider Association. I think it's actually a brilliant move, because it will embrace the full name of it. You can't shorten. You're not going to call it C, right? It's not going to. It doesn't have the same kind of sound. I mean, I'm with you. I was like, see that? It's easy for me to say, but I'm somebody in the know, and you're all about welcoming the folks who want to get in the loop. And the first thing is to have a common language to do that. So kind of works in a good way, if you follow what I'm saying.
I do. We're excited for the refresh, and we're excited for the expansion.
Is that changing your logo and everything?
It is. Yes, we're gonna unveil our new logo on Friday, CiderCon.
How exciting. Okay. Now you do a lot of work with different associations. What are some of those associations that you work with besides the American Cider Association?
I can't not say the American Cider Association. That is such an incredible relationship that we've had, and the CiderCon is a really great example of that. The Cider Institute works with the American Cider Association every year to organize the production track sessions. So we have a large role. We'd love to hear from people on how we can continue to build that programming, and that's just one example of the ways we've worked together.
That's nice.
And then just yesterday, I was at a guild meeting with all of the state and local associations, state and regional associations. Cider Canada was also there, facilitated by the American Cider Association, and just continuing to build and learn from each other. We just ended a 2-year grant that we had with the Michigan Cider Association. It was a specialty crop grant that provided funding for Michigan producers to attend our courses. That was over 2 years, and that also provided seed funding for their staffing and for their internal operations. So those are just a couple of concrete examples, but the relationships are really valuable, especially since we do have classes in different regions. We partner with our associations in those regions to help with outreach and programming.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're now the Cider Institute, not specific to North America. So are there other classes that are going to be taking place in other parts of the world?
Yes, we are about to have our second production tour to the UK. That's going to be May 25th to the 31st. And that is a way for producers to learn from a different perspective, for the Cider Institute to facilitate exchanges between producers, to build those relationships. We are also looking into having an in-person course in the UK, hopefully later this year, maybe in early 2026.
And that is taught by instructors in that country?
Is taught by the Cider Institute instructors in collaboration with partners in that country, in the UK. Mm-hmm.
All right. So that leads me to you. You're the executive director. You've been at the helm for quite a while. And I don't know, do you have a support team behind you? Is there a staffing team behind you?
I am the only staff person, but I'm supported by our board of directors, and I'm supported by our part.
You're the one.
I'm the one in the
doing the Rubik's square work, right?
Yes.
So before we get into that, let's just talk about how you came here.
Sure. So my background is in nonprofit organizational development. That's what I've done my entire career, and many of the jobs I've had have been in some way associated with sustainability or local food systems or agriculture. And right before this, I was working for an organization that worked on sustainable wine growing. So it was a natural marriage to enter the cider industry.
It just made sense.
It made sense.
Okay. And do you make cider yourself?
I make cider at home. I have access to the world's best production education, so I can't not make cider every fall. So I do that, but I don't have a commercial cidery.
How much of the coursework have you taken? Is that anything that you ever kind of dip into?
It is. I take the class every time it's offered.
Because you're kind of standby on the Zoom call or whatever you might have it.
Yes, yes.
My goodness, so you could write a book there just on that. And how do you manage this, for tips for other people who are looking to do this type of work or to offer a particular service to their community? What kind of tips would you recommend for that?
As far as organizational perspective?
Organizational purpose. Because, what we see a lot in the cider community is there is a guild or an association, and there's an executive director, which is a heavy-duty title, right? It's one of those E-suite titles. But that's the sole person at the top, at the helm. And I know there's a lot of small guilds around the world that are individuals just like yourself. So how do you maintain that? Despite all, it's cool you have that, on dial, but you're the one, I suspect, that is organizing and doing all that bookkeeping for students and making sure the courses get out.
Yes, I've considered my role as a facilitator's role. I know how all the pieces work together, and I adapt them to what needs to happen at the time. And facilitating, you can't do that without listening. You can't do that without knowing when to ask for help. When you asked about who my support system is, it is those guild leaders, because we are, many of us, alone at our job. And so if you don't necessarily have somebody on your specific team in your organization, I've sought out who knows what I'm experiencing and what I'm going through, and have them be my team. And those have been really valuable relationships.
Mm-hmm. And as far as your technical skills, what kind of technical skills do you need for your position?
For my position, for nonprofit development, it really is a lot of organizational skills, some financial budget skills, strategic planning, all that exciting, fun stuff that I love to do, so others can focus on making cider.
I ask this question a lot of cider makers, anybody in business, and whether you're in a nonprofit or you're in a for-profit business. And you've been in this work for, we're looking at 10 years now, right? Going on to 10 years. There, I assume, must be something that over the course of this work that, when you started off, Bridget started off in 2016, right?
So, yep, 17.
2017.
Close enough. Right,
close enough. I'm going to split hairs there. To now, 2025, going through a pandemic, and, the political climate, how that all changes. Especially when you're talking about international, are there some things where you see where the Cider Institute now is that you wish you had maybe that little crystal ball starting out? Or?
Well, you really named it, the pandemic.
Okay.
And on one hand, I wish I had a crystal ball. And on the other hand, I think we all still are trying to find a crystal ball.
True.
But it's what I was not expecting when I started was the psychology of education and the format that people are looking for. We offered, you offer a cider class, it's going to be an in-person cider class because you're making cider. That's just how it's going to be. Right. And then without that being possible, I've really had to redefine, how are we talking about this? How are we offering it? Who's our audience? How does this open up our audience? And then when we turn to in-person classes and seeing some of the trends from that, then it's like, wait a second, we can't really predict how people's behavior is going to change. It's too soon to tell. So how do you build out an educational program without knowing who's willing to show up or what stage they're at in their career? And so staying in your lane, and cider production education is still a big lane to be in. So how are we able to offer people what they need to take the next step, or personal fulfillment? It doesn't even need to be a professional step. But how do we do that and right fit it for people without also trying to do everything for everybody, because then we're spreading ourselves too thin. So I wish I had a crystal ball, but since I didn't have one, I've learned a lot along the way, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, were you doing so many online courses before the pandemic?
No.
None at all.
Nothing online.
And look how it actually, in some ways, it was a gift to now allow you to go from just one region now to be global. And, there's always a silver lining of even though it's sad, yet true. There's always a silver lining in every situation if we're willing to look at that growth. And since you're in education, and since I've been in education my entire life, I know that's true. That's what we are. We either see what's in front of us or we get pushed to see what's in front of us, and the pandemic pushed us, and now you're able to address that, like so many teachers around the world had to do. And it provides a whole new opportunity, and you get to reach out to people that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to do that. So, God damn that pandemic, but look where it brought you.
It's changed it all.
Right? Yeah, it's really up-leveled it. And what's the 5-year plan here for you and the Cider Institute? What are you looking forward to?
The international expansion is really exciting. When we think about how do we build the audiences, how do we build our audience, and how that translates to how we build the cider industry, talking to other people from other industries or audiences that might not already be familiar with us. So those kind of different pronged approaches is what we're looking to do in building out our coursework. And it's building our educational base. We have incredible instructors, and I look forward to having a system in place where we can have a training for trainers and really build out our educational team. We could be more responsive, we could be more adaptive. Our instructors, our partners at Cornell University, Brock University, Virginia Tech, they're amazing and they work so hard. And it works now, but I want to be in a place where we need more bodies because the demand is so high that our instructors can't do it all. So
that's just like music to my ears, because you know what that's telling all of us listening is that cider's going up, that there's a demand for it. Like the interest is continuing. That makes me excited to think that there's just so many people interested in doing that. Mm-hmm. So bravo, kudos for you for being at the helm of the Cider Institute for the past, I'm going to say 10 years, 9 years, half a dozen this, half a dozen of that, doing that well and bringing it to a bigger and broader audience.
Thank you, Ria. I'm lucky to be able to do so.
Go to the show notes for this year episode 448 at ciderchat.com to find the contact info for the Cider Institute and the links for signing up to newsletters from the Cordic Family Farm and Know Your Roots Consulting. And while you're there, make sure to sign up for Cider Chat's e-cider news too, because every once in a while we roll out an e-newsletter to you and update you on tours, travels, and fun out and about in Ciderville. And with that, I leave you here. This is Rhea Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
Strange apples, bitter sharp. Strange apples, juicy ripe. Bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dop, bop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-dop. Who wants a Tannenbaum?
I want a Tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples,
bittersweet. Strange apples, hanging high. Got them strange apples. Forget the pie. Strange apples, squeeze them tight. Got them strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-da. Pop, 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 ba-da-dum-doo-doo-da.
Who wants a Tannenbaum?
I want a Tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples. Come and see. Plenty strange apples for you and me. Strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-doo-da. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-doo-da. Pop, pop, pop. Ba-da-doo-doo-da. Pop, pop, pop. Pop, 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 pop. Yeehaw!